This audiobook recording is in the public domain. This means I am providing zero copyright protection, which means you can do anything you want with this video and this audio. The video will be entirely black because I have my phone face down. There's no copyright, so you can do anything you want. You are explicitly encouraged to download this and re-upload it in other places. You can add animations. You can edit my voice so I sound like, I don't know, Mickey Mouse or something. You can do anything you want. I do have a bunch of rescue kittens running around, so you might hear them making noises. One of them might decide to jump up onto the couch and step on the phone and turn the video off, in which case my job will be harder. This is an audiobook for Unwillingly to School by Pauline Ashwell, which is also public domain. It was originally published in Astounding Science Fiction magazine in January 1958. The copyright was not renewed, leaving the story in the public domain. I think there are 2 stories in this series that are public domain so far. It is Unwillingly to School and The Lost Kafoozalum, which is the sequel. I will be reading that next. Hopefully I can get them all in the same video. Probably not, because this is a really long story. I'll stop rambling now. I am recording this because I want more people to be aware of this story so that somebody can come along and write a third series, a third book in this little duology that's public domain so far, so that this main character can, please, for the love of God, be rescued from this creep. That's all I'll say. Alrighty. Now, I guess I should say more. This story was written in 1958. It portrays grooming of I'm not sure how old she is when this starts. It portrays the grooming and pretty much kidnapping of a young woman, possibly literally a teenager, by a college professor as good thing, because the author is kind of not a good person. So it's kind of a horror story, but it's not treating itself like a horror story. Anyways, Unwillingly to School by Pauline Ashwell. The original blurb is, Liz was sure to be an influence. For the protection of mankind, that young miss had to be trained. We begin the audiobook now at 2 minutes, 48 seconds. This may look like a moviegram of Brownian movement, but no such luck. It is Russet Interplanetary College of Humanities opening day. 4,327 other freshers milling around, and me in the middle with a little ticket on my chest says L. Lee, because my given name is something not to mention. They say these kids came from 124 planets just to study at Russell, but personally, of all points in the known continuum, this is the one I would rather be any place but. Freshers come in all sizes, all colors, but a fair number are girls, so there is one thing we will be finding in common anyway. This may come as a surprise, that I am a girl, I mean. My tutor at prelim school says my speech is feminine, as spoken but written down looks like the kind of male character who spits sideways. I reply that I talk like my dad. He is a character all right, male too, but does not spit. If you spent your formative years with a filter in your kisser, neither would you. He says my flair for seeing the functional significance of the minutiae of behavior is obviously what got me chosen for the cultural engineering course. I know what got me into that, all right. I am not so dumb as I look. Do you think I flatter myself? Brother, by what goes on, I look dumb indeed. Maybe this is because of my hair, curly and pale-colored. All right, blonde. My eyes are blue as they come, which is by no means sky color, whatever books say. My skin is pink some places, white others when washed, and a visitor we had once said I had a rosebud mouth. I am 7 then. I do not hold it against her right away. There are no roses where I grew up. When I landed on Earth, I hunt one up and see was it a compliment. Brother? I find later they come other colors, but this one is frostbite mauve, and the shape. I wish to state here, my mouth has 2 lips like anyone else. Where I grew up is Exodus 23. How I got hauled off it is due to a string of catastrophes, but the name of biggest is J.D.M. McClare. but the name of the biggest is J.D. McClare. Sorry, the kittens were running around distracting me. Exenus' sun is what they call a swarmer. 97 small planets in close orbit, plus odd chunks too many to count. 23 is the biggest, gravitation 1.07 Earth diameter, a fraction less. If you ever heard of the place, it was because they mine areopagite there. 94% production for sale in the known volume of space comes from mines on 23, but for that reason to live there at all. My dad started as a miner and made his pile, then he took up farming and spent the lot. He has it all back again now. Areopagite forms only in dry dust conditions, meaning humidity at ground level near above 2.5% per rainfall, none. Hence, from this farming on Exenus is something special, but miners are like other people, they have to eat too. I'm going to pause the audiobook here just to say that I will be stuttering a little bit because there's commas. There's a lack of commas where commas are meant to be in written speech. When Dad started, there was him and Uncle Charlie, and their first year they fed 2,000 men. Nowadays, the planetary population is 11,320, and there are 7 other farmers. Most of them started working for Dad and graduated to farms of their own. Nobody on Exenus eats trucked concentrates now. Uncle Charlie is on, as in secretary, meaning no real relation. He is an engineer when Dad met him down on his luck, but able and willing to build diggers, harvesters, weather maker for 10,000 acres out of any junk to hand. Had to be done like that because Exenus Haulage Company, the big company did all the shipping in and out of the planet, sold food concentrates. No competition welcome, therefore no shipment seeds, agricultural machinery, all that would have been allowed through. It takes Charlie 2 years to do his job. Meanwhile, Dad bones up the agricultural side. Nowadays, there are a lot of books on dry dust farming. They cover soil making, microbiology, economical use of weather, seed selection, plenty more. At that time, there were fewer, and Dad read them all. If he has sent for the usual text, EHC might have caught on and had a little accident in transit, so Dad gets them in as books. I mean antique style, chopped in pieces and hinged together down the side. They are labeled curio facsimiles and disguised with antique picture covers, mostly show the damnedest females you ever saw, dressed in bits and pieces mostly crooked, some of them dead. People collect these things for some reason. Dad has 1 or 2 put up on top with text to match the outside. Rest are textbooks on agriculture, like I said. Charlie offers to make reader reels from them, but Dad turns it down. He still has all those books packed in a row. When I was little, he used to tell me how he learned all his farming studying that way, without using machines. It just showed you could still do it if you had to. Dad never had any education, and it bothers him. I used to think that was why he kept on telling me this. Well, there are plenty of troubles, not least with EHC, but Dad is not the type to give up. Reason he started farming in the first place was he caught on EHC were making it impossible for anyone to do just that. Dad does not like people who try to stop him, even if it was not what he wanted in the first place. I am born soon after the farm is really set. My mother walked out when I was 3. She was fresh out of college with an agricultural degree when he met her. Maybe the trouble was Dad caught on she knew less about dry dust farming than he did. Maybe other things. Exenus 23 is no place for a woman, they say. It is okay by me, but I was born in the place. Dad and Charlie raised me between them like the crops. This is to say, carefully. There are plenty more people now in Green Valley where the farms are, 30 or so, and they change all the time. People who come out, farm for a bit, makes their pile and go on. We even get women sometimes. People's wives from town come out to board sometimes. Dad lets them because he thinks they will mother me. Well, mostly I manage to steer them off, and no hard feelings. It is my home after all. They got to be reasonable about it if they want to stay. Seems they do as a rule. Town is kind of tough to live in. Several stayed a year or more. So it is not true to say that I grew up in a wholly masculine environment. I knew up to 7 women for quite a while. Green Valley is outside the mining area and about 600 miles from town. This has to be. Town gets most of its water combing the air, and so do the weather makers for the farms. Anyway, mining and farming do not mix so good. The valley is 20 miles each way, hedged by hill ridges up to 70 feet high. Outside is stone flats, dust bowl, and tangle mats of Gordianus scrub. 40 miles roundabout, I know it pretty well, but the rest of the plain is about the same, except for town. This is where I was born. I was all set to stay there till Dad had his accident, first catastrophe on the way to this place. I am up one day in a helivan, watching the harvest on a 1,000-acre strip at the edge of the farm. There is a moderate wind blowing from over the hill, so we are keeping the weather lid over each row until just before the harvester gets there, so as to keep the dust out of the grain. I am directing this. Here at the edge of the weather lid is just above the corn. It runs from the weather maker in the middle of the farm in a bicone like a very flat tent, 50 feet high in the middle and 4 miles across. You cannot see it, of course, unless the wind blows dust across, or there is rain inside. The lid is just a layer of air polarized to keep dust one side, water vapor the other. Just now you can see plainly where puffs of dust go skittering across. The harvester gets to the end of the row on the far side from the road. I signal Biff Plater at control, and he draws the weather lid in 20 yards. The harvester lifts its scanner at the end of the strip, wheels and comes through the next swathe, with a big cutter pushing 6 inches above the ground, stalks sliding back into the thrasher-bagged corn following on the trailer behind. Then I see Dad come along the road, riding the biggest core on the farm. Core are Pseudocamelopus hirsutinaris, part of the indigenous fauna we started taming to ride on about a year ago. Dad does not really enjoy it. He cannot get used to having no brakes, but he will not give up. I see right away he is having trouble. The core slipped its bridle and navigating on its own, long neck straight out and Dad slipping to and fro in the saddle. His mouth filter is bumped out and waving behind. The harvester is half up the field. I do not want the core to be scared. I yell to Biff, "Turn it off quick!" But the controls are on the other side of the shack from the weather ones. Then the core sees the scanner rearing on its stalk. It is not frightened at all and thinks this is the greatest great-grandfather of the species and charges straight across to say hello. I am yelling to Biff and I got my eyes shut. Then he is yelling right back. I have to open them and look down. The core has gone straight into the second before it stopped. Dad had been thrown and the harvester stopped and one tread a foot from his head and a corner gone over his arm. I bring the heli down, yelling for help on all frequencies. Hold on, I gotta get a drink. I'm talking too much. Dad is breathing, but flat out. Fractured skull, ulna and radius like a jigsaw puzzle, multiple injuries to the chest. The core is in 3 pieces mixed up with the machine. We call up the hospital in town and they direct first aid over 2-way visiphone while the ambulance comes. It takes 70 minutes and I am swearing to myself we will hire a permanent doctor if we have to Shanghai him after this. The ambulance arrives and the doctor says we have done as well as can be expected. Fortunately, Dad is tough, but it will be a 2-month hospital job at the least. They crate him up in a splint plastic and load him into the ambulance. Buffalo Cole has packed me a bag. I get in too. I am out again first thing. Passengers not allowed. I get out the long-distance heli and go straight to town. I am waiting in the hospital when they arrive. I wait till they have Dad unpacked before I start to inquire. These hospitals! It is all they will do to let me look at him. When I do, he is lying in a kind of a tank. His chest is the wrong shape. There's a mass of tubes round his head running to a punk. This is for respiration of blood clots in the brain. More, too, for the other end for external aeration of the blood. He is not going to use his lungs for a bit. I think this does not look real, Dad and all this plumbing. Then I hear my breathing goes odd. Next thing you know, the doctors steer me outside. They say it will be a week before the blood clots go and Dad wakes up, but they will report by visiphone every day. I say no need. They can tell me when I visit each day. They are deaf or something. They repeat they will call Green Valley each morning at 13 o'clock. I say, is that when they would prefer me to call in? At least they have got it. They say, surely I will not fly 600 miles every day. I say, no, I will be stopping right here in town. Then they want to know what friends I am stopping with. I say at a hotel, of course. Consternation all around. No place for young girls to stop in this town. They make it out the toughest hellhole in the known volume. I say nuts, there are hotels for transients and their wives too. They flap wildly in all directions and offer me a bed in the nurses' hostel, which is men only ordinarily, but they will make an exception. I say thanks very much, no. In the end, they tell me to go to the Royal Hotel. It is the most respectable of the local dumps. Do not on any account go to the Royal Arms, which is a pub in the toughest quarter of the town. They tell me how to go. I put my luggage bag in my pocket. For some reason, I have clutched it throughout, and I go. Way I feel, I do not go to the hotel straight off. I walk around a bit. I have been into town, of course, shopping with Dad, maybe twice a year, but I do not seem to know it so well as I thought. Then I find I have got to the Royal Arms, or just near it anyway. It is now late evening. The sky is black except for stars, planets, and meteors crashing through every minute or two. The town is lit up, but there are few in the streets. Quiet folk are home in another quarter, the rest still fueling up indoors. Way I feel is some toughery would suit me fine to take my mind off, because taming cores was my idea in the first place. Maybe I will get a chance to try that judo kick I learned from Buffalo Cole. So I slip through the noise valve doors one after another and go into the pub. Brother, the noise trap is efficient all right. Outdoors no more than a mutter, so there is a real wallop inside. Every idea in my head is knocked clean out of it, even the thought I might go away. Among other things are 3 jukeboxes in 3 corners going full blast, and I cannot hear them at all. Part of the decibels come from just conversation, part is encouragement in a 3-way fight in the middle of the floor. I am still gaping when 2 of the parties gang up on the third and toss him all the way to the door. I dodge just in time. He rebounds off the inner valve and falls right at my feet. Everyone turns and sees me, and the jukeboxes all become audible at once. I go down on my knees to see if the character I have just missed meeting is still breathing or not. His pulse is going all right, but his face is a poor color whenever blood lets me see. I yell for water, but competing with the jukeboxes gets nowhere. I am taking breath to try again when someone turns them off at the main. Silence comes down like a cotton wool. I ask for water in a whisper. Someone brings it and tries to take me away. I find I am clinging to the guy, yelling, "He is hurt! He is hurt!" There is blood balling in tiny drops on my Evercleans and smeared over my hands. I am trying to wipe it off with a disposable. Not suited to this, of course. It crunches and grows away to dust, and then the cotton wool feeling in my ears spreads everywhere. Then I am lying on my back with water running down my chin and a sensation of hush all around. I try to sit up, and something stops me. Someone murmurs soft nothings that fail to make sense. I keep quiet till I have sorted, and then I figure I have fainted clean away. Me, Lizzie Lee. I sit up and find I am on a couch in a sort of back room, and there are faces all around. Half of them seemed knocked out of shape or with knobs on, bashed recently or previous. The faces all jostle, and I hear they are telling those behind me, "She is sitting up," and the glad news getting passed along. Someone pushes through the faces carrying a tray with food for 6. I deduce they think I fainted from hunger or something. I would put them right on this when I realize the feeling in my middle is because I ate 10 hours ago. I weigh in, and they appear pleased by this. So I feel an explanation is owed them, and I tell them my dad is in hospital with an accident. You would not think they could get so upset about a perfect stranger. Sure, this will not last, but it is genuine feeling just now for all that. There is more buzzing and a kind of rustle, and I find they are taking up a collection. I am horrified. I cry, "No, no!" They are very kind, but I truly cannot accept. They think this is proper pride or something. They start to mutter again, and someone says, "Well then, no need to worry. Noddy will give me a job as long as I need it, won't he?" Noddy is in the crowd somewhere. He is keeper of this pub. He seems to agree, and I figured out he'd better. I do not see why they are so sure I am indigent until I happen to glance down. I am still in my work Evercleans I was wearing when Dad got hurt. Also, it breaks on me suddenly that this is the worst quarter of the town. No girl would come here if she could afford to go elsewhere. Even then, not into the Royal Arms unless full of sweet innocence or something. And I cannot speak. When a bunch of strangers are mooning over your problems because you are a poor young thing, you cannot tell them you walked in to look for a fight. Truly, I could swear out loud. In 2 shakes of a vibrator, they have it fixed. Noddy will give me a job, as long as I need one, and I can have a room above the pub, and at least 50 husky miners have sworn a personal guarantee no one within miles will lift a finger in any way I would not wish. So what can I do? I thank them and I walk out into the bar, and when I get there I find that laws of human nature are not wholly suspended. There is a fight going on. My bodyguard behind me gives a concerted roar, and the fight stops, and they look sheepish at me. It is so clear that they expect me to look shocked and sorrowful that I cannot help it. This is just what I do. I ask the cause of the fight, and they shuffle, and the bigger one says he is very sorry and would like to apologize, miss. It turns out he has come in since I arrived, and wished to get drunk with the minimum delay. The assembled party tell him damsel in distress back at bar, and he says to hell with that, she's probably faking it anyway. He can see this was error and regrets it very much. And I have to make a production over forgiveness. He will never believe me unless I do. So I am stuck. You think this will all wear off in a day or two? Brother, so do I. At first, that is. But it does not. I have reformed the place overnight. I begin to think getting drunk each night and working it off by fighting are not really their personal choice. All they need is a little stimulus to snap them out of it, such as the influence of a good woman, maybe, and looks like I am elected. I get so busy listening to assorted troubles and soothing fights before they come to the boil, apart from any job Naughty can give me, such as putting glasses in the washer and dishing the drinks. I hardly have time to think about Dad, except at the hospital each day. He is dead out for 7 days, just like they said, while the blood clots get loose from his brain. Also, they set his ribs and arm and tack up things inside. My minor friends all cheer me up. They say this is a good hospital and tell me all the times they have been put together again themselves. I say, oh, and ah, so often I am quite tired. It seems to please them anyway. Then Dad comes awake. He does not do it while I am there, of course, but I am allowed to sit with him 2 hours the day after. They have shifted him out of the tank into a proper bed and taking the plumbing away. Toward the end while I am there, he comes around and says, "Hello, Liz, how have you been?" And I want to cry, but I am damned if I will. I say, I am fine, and he is already asleep again. Let me get another drink. Because this is public domain, if you so choose, you can edit out my interruptions. I don't know how to edit videos, and also my computer doesn't work, which is why we're doing this. I ring home like I do every day. Charlie is out, so I leave a message, then I go back to the pub. I feel truly like I could sing all the way. I do not notice until Naughty says so that I am singing anyway. Naughty is in a sour mood, but when I tell him about Dad, he fetches out half a smile and says, Will I be leaving them? I say no, Dad has another 1 month and 21 days in hospital to go. At this, his face falls under 3 gravities, and he says, all very well for me. I say, why? Can he not afford to pay me? He says what troubles him is the pub. Since I came, liquor drinking is down 2/5. If anybody starts to get drunk, the rest stop him in case something occurs to sully my pure girlish mind. It becomes clear that to Naughty the sobriety is not pleasing at all. Well, it is far from being my wish either. At least I think that at first. Then I think again, do I really want my pals going back to the old routine, drunk every night, dead drunk Friday to Monday? This do-gooding is insidious stuff. I go on thinking about it when I have time. This is not often, because the boys are so pleased to hear Dad is better they allow each other to get quite lit. I have to head off one row after another. I begin to think, anyway, this situation cannot last long. The pressure is building up visibly. Something is going to blow. They need outlets for aggression and getting none just now. Also, I must do something for Naughty. I could tell him Dad will pay back his losses, but Naughty's head is solid bone. If I once got it into it, I am not a dear little down and out. He would let it out again at the If I once got into it, I am not a dear little down and out. He would let it out again at the diagrammatic wrong time. Things have got to end, but they have got to end tidy with no hard feelings. I shall need help for this. I got out that night as soon as Naughty is in bed and get to a public visiphone. I dial home. Never mind, it is 1 a.m. I want Uncle Charlie. What I get is Buffalo Cole, looking sleepy. He lets out the yip he learned from an old stereo and asks where I am, and where I have been so long and so loud I cannot tell him for quite a while. Then he tells me Charlie is here in town. He has assumed that I was staying at the hospital. They phoned today as usual. He asked for me and found I was somewhere on my own. He busted into town straight off like a coor calf into a cornfield and been hunting for me all over, tearing out hair in bunches. He is staying with a friend in the far side of town. I ring. Brother? Now he has found me, he has no wish to talk to me. I am to stay in the visiphone booth and not move till called for. Well, I suppose I can wiggle my ears if I like. Charlie arrives in a heli 4 minutes later and mad enough to burn helium. He gives me the kind of character my pals sketch for each other when I am not supposed to be by. He is not interested in excuses. He will get me out of whatever mess I am in for my father's sake. I will come to a bad end some day, but I can have the grace to keep it till the old man is on his feet again. I have learned something these past few days. I do not yell back. I say I have been very foolish and I need advice. Do not think this fools him, but he is taken aback slightly. I get something said before he recovers, and in the end I tell the whole thing hardly interrupted at all. At the end he gives me a peculiar look when he says one of his Hatcheria gave birth to a parrot, and says nothing at all. I say, "Look, Charlie, my idea is this." He says, "Liz, your ideas are the start of this trouble in the first place. You have been getting ideas ever since I knew them, and every one worse than the one before. Just let me think about this." Then he says, "Well, if you leave without explanations, I suppose we will have these desperate characters hunting for you all over town, and if the truth gets out, there will be a rumpus because of that. I guess you better go back there for tonight anyway, but how are you going to get back in?" I say I have a key. Does he think I crawled out the window? From his look, I rather gather he does. Men are children at heart. All the same, I go back quietly and sleep like a tombstone. In the morning, I see Charlie at the hospital, and he says he has an idea, but seems he prefers to sit on it and see how it will hatch. I do not tell him what I think of this. When Dad wakes and says a few words and things look brighter, and afterwards Charlie swears he has a real idea how I can get out of this without any hurt feelings, it just needs a bit more work on it. I have a typo there. I put a but more work, but it's a bit more work. I go back to the Arms, thinking my troubles are half over. Brother, what error? This is where they begin. That evening, I am chinning to some types who cut up yesterday. I tell them how shocked I am, how surprised, how sad, because they have backslid. They are always sure I feel like this. If I do not say it, they get upset, because they suppose my feelings too deep for words. I can do this sort of thing no hands now. Just the same, it takes some concentration. When the stranger comes in, I hardly notice him at all. He is a tall chap in the usual Evercleans with filter mask over his shoulder. All that is strange is I have not seen him before. Men stick to their own pubs, as a rule. He slides into a corner and swaps words with the regulars, and I forget him altogether. The clock strikes 12, 2 hours to midnight closing. Enter a tall, dark stranger. Short hair and big shoulders, and the face that launched the campaign for Great Outdoor Shampoo. Maybe 22 years old. He takes a quick look around, and I guess he does not think much of the place. Well, he should have seen it about a week ago. Now there is only one single jukebox going, and people are just chatting over drinks. Not a fight in the place. He comes up to the bar and taps someone on the shoulder to make way. Try touching someone a fortnight back and stand well clear. This time the fellow stops his fist before it goes 6 inches, and then moves over an inch or two, and I am face to face with the stranger over the gap. He looks at me and registers more surprise than I thought his face could hold. I say, "What are you drinking, sir?" He swallows hard and says, "Beer, please." Something is displeasing him like mad, but I cannot see how it is me. I give him his beer, and he gives me an unloving look and moves away. He horns in on one of the gatherings and starts to chat. I am busy, but I keep an eye on him, and it seems to me that the chat is getting too emphatic for health. I beckon over a miner called Dogface and ask what goes on. He says, "That character been annoying you, Liz?" I say, "No. Is he annoying anybody else?" Dogface says he asks too many damn questions. Someone will paste him any minute now. I sign for another miner called Swede. These two are the steadiest around. I say, "Ride herd on this character and keep him out of trouble." They say, "How?" I say, "Get into conversation and stop him talking to anyone who is prone to get mad." They look doubtful, so I tell them to talk to him. He is asking questions, well, tell him answers. Tell him about life on Exenis. You can see he is a fresh-out Terry. Tell him about mining. That will be instructive for him. Next I look, Dogface and Swede are one on each side of him, talking away. The other types have all drifted off. The stranger stays for an hour, and they stick by him all the while. When he leaves, no one has laid a finger on him. I have done a good deed this day. Dogface and Swede say they never knew they had so much to talk about. Just the same, the stranger did not look grateful to me. Next day I go to the hospital as usual, wondering if Charlie has hatched his idea. Halfway there, I feel I can't speak suddenly. Halfway there, I feel eyes on the back of my neck. I look round, and there he is again, the tall, dark stranger, I mean. He strides up and says he wants to speak to me. His tone is such that I think of Buffalo's judo trick, but he looks like the type to brush it off with a careless reflex. I could wish there were more people around. I say, "What about?" He says, "I know damned well what about. This is poaching, and he will not stand for it. He will complain to something I do not catch." I say he must be thinking of somebody else. He sizzles behind his teeth and says I need not think I can get out of it by playing innocent, because he will be able to trace me perfectly well. I obviously come from that establishment for muddy-minded morons, Pananthropic Institute of Social Research. Everybody knows Exenis is Russett's field workplace, and no other school would crash it, let alone horning in on a practical that way. Furthermore, the dodge I am using was corny in the arc or earlier. I am much perplexed, but more angry, and ask what it is he is proposing to do. He says, "Don't worry, I will find out later." I can guess he does not know either, but before I can say so, he goes striding away. I walk on, getting madder as I go. This mystery on top of everything else is enough to drive me round the fourth dimension, and he won't catch on to his mistake, and shall never hear it explained. However, when I arrive, I forget him because Dad is awake and fit for talking to. Several times I wonder, shall I tell him the whole thing? But he is still sick. This is no time to tell him I am serving in a bar in the toughest part of town. We talk quietly about the farm and plans for the next year and things... Hold on. We talk quietly about the farm and plans for the next year and things we did when I was little. All of a sudden I want to cry. Then Charlie comes. One visitor at a time. I have to go. Charlie needs some instructions about the farm. I think I will go out and walk around. I do not like waiting in the hospital. They think women belong some other place. I am halfway down the outside steps when there is a shadow over me and a voice says, "Excuse me, Miss Lee." I turn and stare. Brother, what is this? Are they making a stereo on Exenis? This is the handsomest man I have ever come across. He makes the one this morning look like a credit for 20 from all the one mold. I am certain I never saw him before. He says, "We met last night, though that was hardly an introduction. He is glad of an excuse to make my acquaintance now." I think, no, this cannot be. Yes, it is. This is the gink I hardly noticed last night. Same face, same voice, same hands, and I never looked at him twice. How in space is it done? Brother, he called me Miss Lee. I say there must be some mistake, and turn toward the hospital again. He says the hospital clerk told him my name, and that he saw me come out of the Royal Arms this morning. Sing hey for the life of a hunted fawn, now I am good and mad, just crazy. He says he thinks the talk would be mutually profitable. What I think is something quite different, and I say it out loud. He has a way of doing things with his eyebrows to look amused. Men have been killed for less. He says, what would the clientele of the Royal Arms think of that? I say, what the hell is that to him? He says he will be delighted to explain if I will give him the opportunity, but this is hardly a suitable place to talk. There are no suitable places, and I tell him so. He says he has a helicar there. If I would care to drive it anywhere I like, he will give me the key. I begin to see what will happen if this specimen opens his face to Naughty and Co. I must know what his game is. I say, okay. We are just getting into the heli when the air is sundered. Liz! Here is Uncle Charlie and my reputation in pieces again. He charges across and my companion says, "Mr. Blair?" which is Charlie's name, though I hardly remember, and he hands over a card with a name and some words on it. Charlie reads it and looks baffled, but not mad any longer. I sneak a look at it. It says I can't read his goddamn name. It says D.J. McClare and a string of initials. Russet Interplanetary College of Humanities, Earth. It has Department of Social Engineering in little letters lower down. Charlie says, "Liz, what in space are you doing now?" McClare says he has to make Miss Lee a rather complicated apology, this being no place to do with which he has suggested a ride. It will be much better if Mr. Blair will come along too. I do not know how it is done, but 10 seconds later, Charlie is inviting him for a drink to the house where he is staying, and I am tagging along behind. The house is close to the hospital and well-to-do, all right, but the air is humidified right through. I never cared for alcohol much, and I am more tired of the smell. When Charlie has done bustling with drinks, McClare begins. He says he understands Miss Lee had an encounter this morning with his pupil, Douglas Layden. I say, great whirling nebulae, not the lunatic who called me a poacher. He says, very likely, Layden came here to do a practical test and finding I had anticipated him was somewhat upset. He explained that students in cultural engineering have a fieldwork test after 2 years. This one had to make a survey on the principal factors leading to violence and try out short-term methods for abating some in a selected portion of the community on Exenis 23, namely the Royal Arms Pub. McClare says Exenis 23 is a very suitable spot for this kind of fieldwork. The social problems stay constant, but the population turns over so fast they are not likely to catch on. Charlie nods to show he gets this. I get it too, and start to be angry. Not just mad, but real angry inside. I say, you mean that dumbbell came out here to push people around just for the exercise? He says fieldwork is an essential part of the course for a cultural engineering degree. I say, hell and hook 'em. Nobody has any right to interfere with people just for practice. He says, not everybody possesses your natural technique, Miss Lee. I say, look, that is different. I was not trying to find out what makes people tick, then fiddle with the springs, and think I done something clever. Charlie says, shut up, Liz. This man does not believe me. Well, I did not start this on purpose, but now I remember all the times I listened to someone tell me his troubles and thought what a good girl I am to listen to this poor sucker. How wise, how clever, how well I understand. I do not like thinking this. Then I find Charlie has started to tell McClare the whole thing. I will say for Charlie, he tells it pretty fair. He does understand why I cannot just let my pals find out I have fooled them, whatever he may have said. But why does he want to tell it to this character and not see it at all? But why does he want to tell it to this character when not see it at all? Then he says, well, Professor, if I understand what cultural engineering stands for, this is a problem right in your line. I would very much welcome advice. Drink time. Don't step on the phone, Mr. Kitty Cat. Then he says, well, Professor, if I understand what cultural engineering stands for, this is a problem right in your line. I would very much welcome advice. McClare says nothing, and Charlie says it is a very minor matter, of course. McClare says, there, he does not agree. He says if these tough types caught on that their dear little down-and-out was really rich, it would not stop at personal unpleasantness. The whole relation between the mining and farming communities might well be upset. I would like to sneer, but cannot, because it is perfectly true. Dad is pretty rich and has a big effect on local affairs. If the miners think his daughter been slumming around making fools of them, no knowing what comes after. McClare says, however, it should be easy enough to fix things, so no one can catch on. Charlie says it is not so simple. Liz has to be got away where no one will chase after her. Fortunately, very few people in town are in a position to recognize her, but where can she go now? I say, look, that is easy, give me a job on the farm. Charlie says, suppose they take a fancy to visit you. You think Buffalo Cole is going to remember you are the hired help came here last Tuesday? That is the one place you can be certain someone will give you away. Besides, just at present they know your name, but have not connected it with Farmer Lee. No, Liz, we have to give you a job as companion or something to someone here in town. A respectable woman the miners will keep right away from. I say, Charlie, there are maybe 3 respectable women in town. If you park me on one, all my pals will come round to make sure I have not hired into a brothel by mistake. How will your lady friend care for that? Charlie says what worries him is where to find a woman anyone would believe had voluntarily saddled themselves with a hellcat like me. McClare makes a little cough, and Charlie says, what does he think? McClare says our solutions are too prosaic and too partial. This is a classic example of the Fauntleroy situation and should be worked out as such. I say, what the hell is a Fauntleroy? He says this means a situation in which one younger and apparently weaker person exerts influence over a group of adults by appealing to their protective instincts. Appeal, hell! He says, unintentionally, no doubt. He says the situation can only be properly resolved if the subject appears to be in no further need of protection against the trouble, wherever it may be, in this case, financial. Charlie says, you mean we should tell them Liz has come into money and moved into a hotel? McClare says again that would only be a partial solution. He thinks it would be better if little orphan Liz and her sick father were rescued by a rich uncle arriving next Wednesday from Earth. Charlie says, Why is Liz short of money if she has a rich uncle ready to assist? McClare says he is also a long-lost uncle, only recently made his pile, and just managed to trace the one remaining relative he has ever looked for ever since. I say, why is this better than he died and left me the cash? He says, money for nothing morally unsatisfactory and a bad ending. This way you give something in return. Also, your lonely uncle can take you and your father straight off to Earth and leave nothing for anyone to ask questions about. I do not believe anyone will swallow this hunk of cereal, too convenient all around. According to McClare, that does not matter. It is the right kind of improbably event for this situation. My pals will think it quite right and proper for their little ray of sunshine to be snatched up into unearned affluence and cheer the declining years of her rich relative and bring him together with his estranged brother-in-law. Right ending to the situation. Statistical probability irrelevant to the workings of destiny. Charlie says, where will we find a rich uncle? He himself is too well known. To hire an actor means going off the planet. McClare says, as it happens, he has to leave the planet this afternoon and will be returning next Wednesday himself. Charlie says, you mean you'd do it? That's really wonderful. What do you say, Liz? What I want to say is, I will not have this cultural corkscrew add himself to my family, but the lemonade tangles in my epiglottis. People have died that way, but do they care? McClare says, of course he must get Mr. Lee's permission for this masquerade. I just thought of that one now. I am left with nothing to say except, Helen Hookham, I ought to be back at the bar. I do not trust McClare one angstrom. I could see he was thinking of something else this whole time. Probably, what interesting opportunities for field work if the whole thing got given away. If Dad is really over his concussion, he will put a stopper in the whole thing. Does he hell? Charlie takes McClare along. Never mind visiting hours are over. They spill the whole thing to Dad before the professor catches his ship. Well, I say they made a job of it. When I go along in the morning, absolutely no bites in the furniture. Dad is still weakened, of course. He says, Liz girl, you are as crazy as a cork half. You got as much sense as a shortened servo. The moment I take my eyes off you, you stir up more trouble than a barrel of hooch on a dry planet. It is a long time since I was surprised at anything you do. Here he goes off into ancient history that is not relevant to this affair. This business, he says, has put the triple tungsten-plated tin on top of it. Even you must know what could have happened to you going into a place like that. Liz girl, how could you do such a thing? I say, Dad, I know it was crazy, but you have it all wrong. Miners may be tough, but those types were real good to me. He says, Liz, your capacity to fall on your feet is what scares me the worst of all. One of these days, the probabilities will catch up with you all in one go. Look at this Professor McClare, probably the one man in the universe would know how to get you out of this with no one catching on, and he turns up here and now. Well, I was all set to get out myself with Charlie helping, but it seems to soothe Dad to think about McClare, so I let him. That smoothly put himself over, all right. It develops where he has gone is Magnus 9 in the next system to let an examinee loose on some suckers there. He has left a list of instructions with Charlie, and Dad says I am to order myself according to these and not dare to breathe unless so directed. They are all about what I am to do and say. Charlie stands over me while I learn them by heart. He does not seem to trust me, but hell and all, does he think I want to fluff in the middle of a script like this? Tuesday evening is when the scene starts. My pals ask, what is on my mind? They hope that my old man is not worse, is he? I say I have had a message from a ship just coming within communicator distance, and it is landing tomorrow. I am to meet someone whose name got scrambled at the space gate at 5:30 a.m. I cannot think who this can be, and it worries me a little. Dad has so many troubles already. At this, my pals look grim and say if it is debts, I can count on them, and if it is anything else, I can still count on them. I feel ashamed again. 5:30 is a horrible time to start. I am yawning and chilled through. The night breeze is still up, and dust creeping in among the long pylon shadows in little puffed whirlwinds. 3 ships down on the field got their hatches down and goods stacked around and look broken and untidy. First a little black dot in the sky, then bigger and bigger, covering more and more stars. It does not seem to come nearer, but only to spread. Then suddenly a great bulging thing with light mottling its underside and right overhead. I want to duck. It swings across a little to the nearest pylons. They jerk, and the arms come up with a clang, reaching after the ship. There is a flash and a bang as they make contact just under the gallery where it bulges. Then a long, slow glide as they fold, and she comes down into place like a grasshopper folding its legs. I find my breath hitched up. I take a deep lungful of cold morning dust and start coughing. My pals rally around and pat me on the back. I thought there were only 3 present, but there seem to be more. I cannot see the passengers get off until half are into the gate. McClare is not in sight. Hell, did he not see me here? Perhaps he ditched me. The speaker system wakes with a crack like a splitting rock and says, "Will Miss Lee, believed to be somewhere around the gate, come to the manager's office at once, please?" I take another deep breath more carefully. My pals seem to think it is sinister. I now have 7 on the premises, and they wish to come too. In the end, they elect Swede and Dog-faced bodyguards, and the rest wait outside. I cannot remember one single word I ought to say. In the office is a man in a uniform and another one not. I guess I look blank, but not as blank as I feel the human face could hardly. How has he done it this time? It was several seconds before I recognized him at all. He looks older and kind of worn. You could guess he had a hardish life and certainly not cultured at all. I inhaled dust, so pretend that's her coughing. I say I was called for. My name is Lee. He says slowly, "Yes, he thinks he would have known me. I am very like my mother, and he calls me Elizabeth." Every word is clean out of my head. Fortunately, my pals take over and wish to know how come. McClare looks at them with a frown and says neither of them is James Lee, surely. I say no, they are friends of mine. Does he mean he is my mother's brother? Because I thought he was dead. This is not the right place for that script. This is not the right place for that. The script is gone to coal-sack already. McClare says, yes, he really is John McClare. He brings out papers to prove it. My friends give them the once-over several times and seem to be satisfied. Then they want to know sternly why he had not helped us before. McClare brings out letters from a tracing firm that cover 2 years and a bit. I will say, he is a worker. He has vamped out all this stuff in 3 days with other things to do. I suppose cultural engineering calls for forgery once in a while. My pals seem satisfied. I say, why was he looking for us, seeing he and Dad never got along? This is the script as originally laid down. McClare alters the next bit ad-lib, and I don't take it in, but it goes over with my pals all right. They tell him all about Dad's accident, which they think happened prospecting, and about me in the bar. Just then in comes McClare's acquaintance, well-to-do in business, locally meaning Charlie. Just then in comes McClare's acquaintance, well-to-do in business, locally meaning Uncle Charlie, apologizing for being late, though McClare told him how late to be. My pals shuffle and say, well, Miss Lee, you will not want us now. I say, what is this Miss Lee stuff? You have been calling me Lizzie for weeks. I had to tell them my name, or they'd call me Bubbles or something. McClare says he has a great deal to discuss with his niece and Dad, not to mention Charlie, but he wants to hear all my doings and I will want to tell all my friends. Maybe if he calls around to the Royal Arms in the evening, they will be there? They shuffle but seem gratified. They go. Charlie sits down and the manager goes and Charlie says, woo! I sit down and I do not say anything at all. Well, Naughty will be pleased to get rid of me. That is one life brightened anyway. I do not want another day like that one, 6 hours doing nothing in a hotel. I see Dad about 5 minutes. He uses up the rest of the visitors' time with McClare or Charlie in and me out. Then Charlie flies back home to get something or other, and I want to go too. I want to go home. I will never see this town again. I can't anyway until my pals all leave the planet. I wish this lying were over. Evening, McClare and I go out to the bar. Naughty had a letter from me all about it, and of course everyone knows. The minute we get inside the door, I see everybody is worked up and ready to fight at the drop of a hint. Fauntleroy situation or not, if they think my rich uncle is trying to shoot them all the trouble missed during the last fortnight, if my uncle's trying to snoot them, all the trouble missed during the last fortnight will occur all at one go. Then McClare spots Dogface and Swede at the back of the crowd and says hello. 5 minutes later, it is drinks all round, and everything jaw-block smooth. I could not have done it better myself. Then he is making a speech. It is all about kindness to dumb creatures, meaning me. I do not listen, but watch the faces. Judging by them, he is doing good. I hear the last words, something about, now he has found his niece and her father, he does not want to lose sight of them, and his brother-in-law has consented the whole family goes back to Earth in 2 days' time. It occurs to me suddenly, how am I going to get off the ship? They have found some sick cuss wants to get to Earth and will play my dad 10 minutes, bless you, 10 minutes to get a free passage, but my pals are bound to turn up and see me off. How am I to slip away? Then I stop thinking, because Dogface says slowly, so this is the end, hey Liz? And someone else says, well, it was good while it lasted. And I cry. I put my head down on the table among the drinks and I cry like hell, because I am deceitful and they are kind to me, and I wish I could tell the truth for a change. Someone pats me on the back and shoves a disposable into my hand. I think it is one of my pals till I smell it. Nobody bought this on Xenos. I am so surprised I wad it up and it goes to dust, so I have to stop crying right away. I even managed to say goodbye, and I will never forget them. They say they will never forget me. We say about 10,000 goodbyes and go. Next day, the hospital say Dad overtired. They have sedated him. Seems he was half the night talking to McClare and Charlie. What the hell were they thinking of to let him? My uncle will call for me. I expect Charlie. What I get is McClare. We are going to go shopping, buying some clothes for me to wear on Earth. It seems to me this is carrying realism too far, but I do not want any more time in the hotel with nothing to do. Fortunately, the tailoring clerk does not know me. We have a machine out at the farm. He takes a matrix and slaps up about 10 suits and dresses. They will be no use here at all. No place for condensers or canteen. I cannot even give them away. However, I am not bothered so much about that. McClare is all the time trying to get me to talk. He says, for instance, have I ever thought about going to college? I say, sure. I count my blessings now and then. We are somehow on the topic of education, and what teaching have I had so far? I say, usual machines and reels. I want to get off this. So I start talking about Xenos. He cannot compete there. I tell him about our manners, customs, morals, finance, farming, geography, geology, mining of areopagite. I am instructive right back to the hotel. I hope now he has had enough of it. In the evening, they let me see Dad. They say, you really ought not to be allowed in. He has had his quota of visitors today already. I say, who? But need I ask? It was McClare. The nurse says I am allowed to see Dad. It was Mr. McClare. The nurse says I am allowed to see Dad because he refuses to go to sleep until he has told me something, but I must be careful not to argue. It will retard his recovery if he gets excited again. Dad is dead white and breathing noisily, but full of spirit. The nurse says, you may have 5 minutes, and Dad says, no one is rationing his time for him. When he is ready, he will ring. The nurse is a sturdy 6-footer, and Dad is 5'4". They glare it out. Dad wins in the end. Well, I intend to keep it down to 5 minutes myself. I say, hello, Dad, what cooks? He says, Lizzie girl, what do you think of this McClare? I think quite a number of things, but I say, he is very clever, I think. Dad says, sure he is clever. Professor at a big college on Earth gets students from all planets in the known volume. I've been talking to him, and he says you have a flair. I say, huh? Dad says, I have a flair for this culture engineering business. Professor McClare told him so. I say, well, I promise you already I will keep it under control in future. Dad starts to go red, and I say, look, 2 minutes gone already. What did you want to tell me? Say it straight. And he says, going to send you to college, girl. I say, what? Dad says, Liz, Xenos is no place for a young girl all her life. Time you seen some other worlds, and I cannot leave the farm and got no one to have an eye on you. Now McClare says he will get you into this college, and that is just what I need. I say, but... Dad says, they got schools on Earth for kids like you, been on an outback planet or education restricted other ways. They are called prelim schools. Well, you got the rudiments already. McClare says after 3 months in prelim, you should fit into the Russet College of Humanities. He will act as your official guardian while on Earth. Do not argue with me, Liz. The nurse comes back and says I must go in 30 seconds, not more. Dad is gray in the face and looks fit to come to pieces. I say, all right, Dad, of course you know best. He says, kiss me, Lizzie, and goodbye. Then the nurse chases me out. This is McClare's doing, playing on Dad while he is mixed into the head. He knows damned well this thing is impossible. If he were only in his right mind. I go tearing back to the hotel to look for McClare. I find he is out. I sit there seething, for 27 minutes until he comes back in. I say, I have to speak to him right now. I do not know if he is looking bored or amused, but it is an expression that should be wiped off with a rag. He says, Certainly. Can it wait until we reach his room? We get there, and I say, Look, what is this nonsense you have talked Dad into about me taking some college on Earth or something? Because it is straight out crazy, and if Dad were right in the head, he would know. McClare sits down and says, Really, Lysistrata, what a spoiled young woman you are. Who the hell told him that name is the one thing I really do hold against Dad? McClare goes on that he did not understand at first why my father refused to have told me about the scheme until it was all fixed, but he evidently knew the best way to avoid a lot of fuss. I say, I am not going to leave Exenis. McClare says I cannot possibly avoid leaving Exenis. I have got to go on the ship tomorrow, haven't I? I say, then they can send me back by life ship. He says it is far too late to arrange that now. He says he is officially my guardian from the moment we leave the planet, and he cannot allow me to travel alone. Reason for all this rush is so he can see me to college himself. What is the matter with me? Don't I want to see the world anyway? Sure, sometime, but I don't have to go to college for that. McClare says that is a mistake. Earth had such a rush of sightseers from the out-planet's entrance, not permitted any more except on business. Only way I can get there is as a student, except I might marry an Earthman someday. I say, hell, I would rather go to college than that. Just the same, when I have had enough of it, I am coming straight back home. McClare says I will do no such thing. Great whirling nebulae, he cannot keep me on Earth if I want to go. He says, on the contrary, he has no power to do anything else. My father appointed him my guardian on condition I was to do a 4-year course at Russet. Of course, if I am determined to return to Exenis home and Dad, rather than make the effort to adjust myself to an environment where I have not got everyone secretly under my thumb, there is an easy way out. I have to take a prelim test in 3 months, and if I fail to make it, no power on earth could get me into Russet, and he will have to send me back home. We have to start early in the morning, so good night. I go to my room. If there was anything I could bite holes in, that is what I would do. I will pass that exam if it takes 28 hours a day. No, this is to be on Earth. Well, all the time that they have. I will get into McClare's class and make him sorry he interfered with me. What does he think he can do? What does he think I am? Dad, too. He would have sent me to school long ago, except we both knew I would never make the grade. I am the next thing to illiterate, that's why. Oh, I can read in a way. I can pick up one word after another as they come up in the machine, but I cannot use it right. Dad is the same. Dad used to think it was because he learned to use it too late. Then, when I was old enough to learn, he found I was the same. Some kink in the genes, I suppose. Both of us, we cannot read with the machine any faster than an old-style book. I did not know this was wrong until I was 11. Dad hid the booklet came with the machine, and then one day I found it. Part of it says like this. 1 second. Then one day I found it. Part of it says something like this. It has sometimes been suggested that the reading rate should be used as a measure of general intelligence. This is fallacious. The rate at which information can be absorbed, and therefore the rate at which words move across the viewer, is broadly correlated with some aspect of intelligence, but not with all. Mathematicians of genius tend to read slower than average, and so do some creative artists. All that can safely be said is that people of normal intelligence have reading rates somewhere above 5,000, and that is exceptional for anyone to pass the 10,000 mark. The few who do are usually people of genius in a narrowly specialized field. My reading rate is so low the dial does not show. I work it out with a stopwatch. It is 800 or thereabouts. I go and ask Dad. It is the first time he let me see him feeling bad. It is all he can do to talk about it at all. He keeps telling me it is not so bad really. He got on all right, and he cannot read properly any more than me. He shows me those old books of his over and over again. After this, we do not talk about it, and I do not want to talk about it now. Not to anyone at all. That is the longest night I remember in my life, 19 years of it. In the morning we got to the gate. My pals are there seeing me off. I do not cry because I have just found something that makes me so mad I am just waiting to get in the ship and say what I think to McClare. Then we go into the ship. I cannot say anything now. We have to strap in for takeoff. The feeling is like being in a swing stopped at the top of its beat. I cannot help waiting for it to come down, but after a bit I grasp we are up to stay and get unhitched. In the corridor is a crewman. He says, "Hello, miss, not sick?" I say, "Ought I to be?" He asks, "Am I an old traveler?" When I say first time, he makes clicking noises like I am clever or lucky or both. We are getting acquainted when I feel eyes on my backbone, and there is McClare. McClare says, "Hello, Lizzie, not sick?" I say, I do not have to pretend he is my uncle anymore, and I prefer to be called Miss Lee. I will not have a person like him calling me Lizzie, or in fact anything else. As of now, we are not speaking any more. He raises an eyebrow and says, "Dear him." I start to go, but he hooks a hand around my arm and says, "What is this all about?" I say, "I have been talking to that poor sucker come out of hospital and pretending to be my dad. He has a heart case and thinks he will be cured when he gets to Earth, able to get around like anyone else. I know if he could be cured on Earth, he could be cured on Xenos just as well. He would simply have to go on lying in bed and not even move, and not even anyone he knows around. It is the dirtiest trick I ever knew." Well, he is not smiling now, anyway. I ask, Have I told the man he will... He asks, "Have I told the man he will not be cured?" I say, "What the hell does he take me for?" He says I could answer that, but I won't. You are quite right in thinking that it would be very little good to take a man with a diseased heart back to Earth, but as it happens, he will not be going there at all. Close to Earth, McClare goes on, there is a body on the moon with approximately 1/8 the gravitational pull. There is a big sanatorium on it for men like this one, the rare case not curable by operation or drugs, and if he cannot live a quite normal life, he will at least be able to get out of bed and probably some sort of job. This has been explained to him, and he seems to think it good enough. Sweet spirits of sawdust, I have heard of that sanatorium before. Why does the deck not open and swallow me up? I say, I am sorry. McClare says, why? I say, I am sorry I spoke without making sure of the facts. I do not beg his pardon, because I would not have it on a plate. McClare says my uncle gave him a letter to deliver to me when the ship was under way. He shoves it in my hand and goes away. It is written with Dad's styler. He fell on it during the accident, and the L went wobbly. What it says is this. Dear Liz, about this college, I know you said I know best, but you did not mean it at all. Just the same, I reckon I do. You got to look at it another way. When they got the readers out of my old school and found out I could not use them, they reckoned I was no good for learning, but they were wrong. There is more to being educated than just books, or you could sit and read them at home. You and I are handicapped same way, so we have to use our heads to get over it. All that is in books came out of somebody's head. Well, you and I just got to use our own instead of other people's. Of course there is facts, but a lot of books use the same facts over and over. I found that out when I started to study. There is another thing for you. They told me at school I would never be any good for studying, but I reckon I did all right. It is high time you saw some other worlds than this one, but I would not send you to college if I did not think you could get through. McClare says you have this flair. We will look forward to seeing you for years from now. Don't forget to write. Your loving father, J.X. Lee. P.S. I got a list of books you will want for prelim school, and Charlie had information store copy them. They are in your cabin. J.X. Lee. Poor old Dad. Well, I suppose I better give it a try, and what's more, I better get on with it. There are reels in my cabin, a whole box of them. It will take me a year to get through. The sooner the quicker, I suppose. I jam one in and sit down in the machine and put on the blinkers and turn the switch. There is the usual warm-up. The words slide on slow at first, then quicker, then the thing goes click and settles down. The lines glide across just fast enough to keep pace with my eyes. I have picked myself something on terrestrial biology and evolution. I realize suddenly I will be among it in a couple of weeks. Lions and elephants and kangaroos. Well, I cannot stop to think now. I have to beat that exam. Most of these weeks I study like a drain. They have cut day length in the ship to 24 hours already. I have difficulty sleeping at first, but I adjust in the end. Between readings, I mooch around and talk to the crew. I am careful not to be the little ray of sunshine, but we get on all right. I go and see the man with the sick heart a few times. He wants to know all about the moon, so I read up and relay as well as I can. It sounds dull to me, but compared to lying in bed, I can see it as a high-voltage thrill. He thanks me every day for the whole voyage. I keep saying we only did it because we wanted someone to impersonate Dad. I think there ought to be ways for people like him to get enough money to go to the moon. How can you earn it lying in a bed? He agrees with this, but does not get ideas very much. I think I will write about it to Dad. We stop at the moon to put him down, but no time to look around. McClare had to be back at Russet day before yesterday. I suppose he lost time picking me up. Well, I did not ask him to. Dropping to Earth, I am allowed maybe half a second in the control room to look at the screen. I say, "What is all that white stuff?" They say it is raining down there. More than half of what I see is water, and more coming down. When the Earthbound ask what interests me most on Earth, I say, all that water and nothing to pay. They do not know that what it means getting water out of near dry air, condensing breath out of doors, humidity suit to save sweat on a long haul. First time on Earth I go for a walk, I get thirsty and nearly panic. On Exenus that would mean canteen given out, rush fast for the nearest house. They told me it was raining. All the same, when we walk out of the ship, I think at first they are watering the field from up above. I stand there with my mouth open to see. Fortunately, McClare is not looking, and I come to quite soon. Seems all this water has drawbacks too. Round here they have to carry rainproofing instead of canteens. I spend 3 days seeing sights and never turn on a book. Prelim school. Worst is, I do not have a reader of my own now, only reading rooms, and I have to keep it private that I read more than 2 hours a day, or someone will catch on, and I will be out of there before I have the chance to see what Dad says will work out. There is more to teaching than books for one thing. Class debates. These are new to me, of course, but so are they to the others, and these I can take. Man to man with my tutor, at least I can make him laugh. He says the rugged, unpunctured simplicity of my style of writing is not suited to academic topics, even when leavened with polysyllable, end of quote. But as it is, all these books are getting me down. In the end, I get a system. I read the longest reel on each topic and then the other one that the author doesn't like. That way I get both sides to the question. 3 months and the exam. Afterwards, I keep remembering all the things I should have said till I take a 24-hour pill and go to bed till the marking is over. I wake up and comes a little blue ticket to say I am through. Please report to Russet College in 3 days for term to begin. Well, what am I grinning about? All this means is 4 more years of the same and McClare too added on. It comes to me as a notion I may not get through Russet term without telling McClare all about himself, so I get round and see as much of Earth as I can, more variety than at home. So then 3 days are up, and I am here in Russet Entrance Hall with more people than I ever saw in my life at one time. These are the speaker mechs, which are such a feature of terrestrial life all around the room. One starts up in the usual muted roar like a spacer at a funeral, and it says, "All students for Cultural Engineering, Year 1, gather round, please." This means me. Cultural Engineering is not a big department, only 50 of us coagulated around this mech, but like I said, they come in all kinds. There is one I see projecting above the throng, so brunette he is nearly purple, not just the hair, but all over. What is the matter with him looks like the longest streak of sorrow I ever did see. Well, there are other ways to get pushed into this place than through basic urges, thalamic or otherwise. Just look at me. The mech starts again, and we are all hanging on what drops from its diaphragm. It says we are to file along the corridor G to room 31 Alpha, and there to take the desk allotted by the monitor and no other. This we do. Even by Terry standards, it is a long hike for indoors. I wonder what is a monitor, one of those mechs without which the Earthbound cannot tell which way is tomorrow. Then we are stopped and sounds of argument float back from ahead. That settles it. Terrys do not argue with mechs, and I am conditioned already. It is a way to get no place at all. There is someone human dealing with the line. We go forward in little jerks till I can hear. It is one of those Terry voices, always sound like they are done on purpose to me. We come around the corner to a door, and I can see this monitor is indeed human, or at least so classified. Here we go. It is only me this could happen to. Each person says a name, and the monitor repeats it to the kind of box he carries, and this lights up with figures on it. I wonder why the box needs a human along, and then I remember 124 different planets and accidents to match. I guess this is one point where man can be a real help to machine. I am glad I saw him before he saw me. I tell him Lee, L, and he looks at me in a bored way and then does a double take and drops the thing. I pick it up and say Lee, L, in cultivated tones. It lights up just the same, Q8, which means a desk where I have to sit. The desks are in pairs. When I track Q8 to its lair, Q7 is empty. I sit and wonder what the gremlins will send me by way of partner. I do not wait long. Here she comes, tall and dark and looking like she had brains right down her spinal column. She will have one of those done-on-purpose voices in which I hear so much good advice when the ice breaks in a month or so. Brother, this is so not the place for me. Brother, this is no place for me. She looks straight past my shoulder and does not utter while she is sitting down. I cannot see her badge, which is on the other side. She has what looks to me like a genuine imitation core-hide pouch and is taking styler and block out of it. Then she looks at me sideways and suddenly lights all over with a grin like Uncle Charlie saying as follows, "Why, are you Lizzie Lee?" I do not switch reactions fast enough. I hear my voice say coldly that my name is Lee, certainly. She looks like she stubbed her toe. I realize suddenly she is just a kid, maybe a year younger than I am, and feeling sky. I say quick that I make people call me Lizzie because my real name is too awful to mention. She lights up again and says, so is hers. Let us found a society for the prevention of parents or something. Her brooch says B. Layden. She says her first name will not even abbreviate, so people here get to call her just B. I am just round to wondering where she heard my name when she says that stuffed singlet in the doorway is of course her big brother Douglas, and she has been waiting to meet me ever since. Here big brother Douglas puts the box under his arm and fades gently away. The big doors behind the rostrum slide open, and the clock turns to 14 hours, and drums and trumpets, here comes McClare. Here comes Mr. McClare. B. Layden whispers, I think Professor McClare is wonderful. Do not you? Brother. I know McClare is going to deliver the opening address of the year to cultural engineering students. It is my guess all such come out of the same, so I can take time off for some thought. Mostly, I am trying to decide what to do. Prelim school was tough enough, so this will be tough squared. Is it worth going through just to show McClare I can do it? Sure it is. But can I? I go on thinking these lines, such is what Dad will say if I want to give it up. I just about decided all I can do and wait and see, when suddenly it is time up. Clock shows 1500 hours, exactly just as the last word is spoken, and exit McClare. Something I will say. I look around and all the faces suggest I should maybe have listened after all. B. Layden is wrapped like a parcel or something, then she catches me looking at her and wiggles slightly. She says, we have been allotted rooms together, sharing a study. Do I mind it? I assume this is because we come together in the alphabet, and I say, why should I? She says, well, on the form it said put down anyone you could like to room with, and she wrote Miss Lee. I ask, did she do this because mine was the only name she knew, or does she always do the opposite of what big brother Douglas tells her? She answers, both. Okay by me, anyway. Our rooms are halfway up the center tower. When we find them, first thing I see is a little ticket in the delivery slot says, Miss Lee, call on Professor McClare at 15:30, please. Guardian or no, I have not seen him not more than twice since landing, which means not more than twice too often. Still, I go along ready to be polite. He lets me sit at opposite and looks thoughtful in a way I do not care for. He says, well, Miss Lee, you passed your qualifying exam. I say, yes, because this is true. He says, it was a very economical performance exceeding the minimum level by 2 marks exactly. Hell's bells, I did not know that. Marks are not published, but I swallow hard and try to look as though I meant it that way. McClare says the admission board are reluctant to take students who come so close to the borderline, but they decided after some hesitation to accept me, as my prelim tutor considered that once I settled down as a student and made up my mind to do a little work, I should get up to standard easily enough. Let me make sure the phone battery is not going to die on me. Alright, don't tell me what the battery's at. Hello, can I see the battery? Yeah, we're good. He says, however, from now on it is up to me. I will be examined on this term's work in 12 weeks' time, and I'm expected to get at least 10% above pass level, which cannot be done by neglecting most of the work set. From now on, there are no textbooks to rely on. He presents these facts for my consideration. Good afternoon. I swagger out, feeling lower than sea level. It is no use feeling sore. I took a lot of trouble to hide the fact that I did a lot of work for that exam, but I feel sore just the same. The thing I want to do most is get 100% marks in everything just to show him. I got a feeling this is exactly how he meant me to react, because the more I think about it, the more sure I am. Very few things happen by accident around McClare. Take rooming, for instance. I find very quickly that most people taking cultural engineering have not got the partners they put in for. This makes me wonder why B got what she wanted, meaning me. Naturally, the first thing I think of is she has been elected good influence. This makes me pretty cagey, of course, but after a day or two, I see I must think again. B always says she does not look for trouble. This may be true. She is very absent-minded, and at first I get the idea she just gets into a scrape through having her mind on something else at the time. But later I think she has principles, and these are the back of it. First time I hear about these is 3 nights after opening. There is a knock at my bedroom window at maybe 3 hours. I am not properly awake, and do not think to question how somebody can be there, seeing it as it is 500 feet up the tower. I open the window, and B falls inside. I am just ready to conclude I must be dreaming when B unstraps a small anti-grav pack, mountaineering type, and says somebody offered her the beastly thing as a second-hand bargain. She has been trying it out, and it doesn't work. Of course, an anti-grav cannot fail altogether. If the space warp section could break down, they would not be used for building the way they are. What has gone wrong is the phase tuning arrangement, and the thing can be either right on or right off, but nothing in between. B said she stepped off the top of the tower maybe an hour ago and got stuck straight away. She stepped a little too hard and got out of reach of the tower parapet. She only picked that night for it because there was no wind, so she had no chance of being blown back again. She had to turn the anti-grav off, a little snatch at a time, and drop a little by little until the slope of the tower caught up with her. Then she went on, turning it snap on and snap off, and kind of slithering down the stonework until she got about the right floor, and then she had to claw halfway around the building. B says she was just going to tap at the window above mine, and then she saw that frightful Neo Pueblo statue old Groucho was so proud of. Then she came one down further and found me, but I certainly take plenty of waking. Well, I am wide awake now, and I speak to her severely. I say it is her career, her neck, neither of them mine, but she knows as well as I do that jumping off the tower is the one thing that in this university is utterly forbidden, and no ifs. B says that's just 'cause some idiots tried to jump in a high wind and got blown into the stonework. I say, be that as it may, if she had waked up old Groucho, professor of the interpretation mechanics 90 past week, she would have been expelled straight away. I add further, she knows best if it would be worth it. B says she is a practicing pragmatist. This turns out to mean she belongs to a bunch of who say rules are made mostly for conditions that exist only a little bit of the time, e.g. the one about the tower. B is quite right that it is not dangerous except in a high wind. Not if you have an anti-grav, I mean. B says pragmatists lead a full life because they have to make up their own minds when rules really apply and act accordingly. She says you do not lead a full life if you obey a lot of regulations when they are not necessary, and it is a principle of pragmatism not to do this. B says further it is because Terrys go on and on about obeying regulations unnecessarily that outsiders think they are sissy. I say, huh? B says it is not her fault she never had any proper adventures. I remark, if her idea of an adventure is to get hauled in front of the dean, why did she not go ahead and wake up old Groucho instead of me? B says the adventure is just taking the risk. Everybody ought to take some risk now and then, and breaking rules is the only one available just now. This causes me to gawp quite a bit, because Earth seems to me maybe 15 times as dangerous as any planet I heard of so far. There are risks on all planets, but mostly life is organized to avoid them. Like back home, the big risk is getting caught without water. There is only about 1 chance in 1,000 for that to happen, but everybody wears humidity suits just the same. On Earth, you get a sample of about all the risks there are, mountains and deserts and floods and the sea and wild animals and poisons. Now it occurs to me, Terrys could get rid of most of them if they really cared to try, but their idea of a nice vacation is to take as many as possible just for fun. Well, later on it occurs to me, I should never have understood this about Terrys, but for talking to B, and I look round and find a lot of the Terrys got paired up with outsiders for roomies, and maybe this is why. I say to B some of what I think about risks, and it cheers her up for a moment, but she goes on getting into trouble on pragmatic principles just the same. Me, I am in trouble too, but not on principle. The work at first turned out not so bad as I expected, which is not to say it was good. Each week we have a different director of studies and we study a different topic, with lectures and stereos and visits to museums, and of course we read books. Further, we have what are called class debates, kind of an argument with only one person speaking at a time and the director to referee. Terry say this last is kid stuff. The outsiders met it mostly in prelim school, if then, so they really study hard so as to do good. Next thing you know, the Terrys are outclassed and trying hard to catch up, so a strenuous time is had by all. I begin to see there is a real thing between these two groups, though no one likes to mention it out loud. Class debates I do not mind. I've been used to arguing with Dad all my life. What gets me is essays. We do one each week to sum up, and all my sums come wrong. Reason for this is we get about 15 books to read every week and are not allowed more than 3 hours a day with a reading machine. This is plenty for most people, but I only get through a quarter of the stuff. If you only knew a quarter of the relevant facts, you get things cockeyed, and I can find no way around this. My first essay comes back marked, some original ideas, but more references to actual examples needed. Style wants polishing up. The second has, original! With 3 exclamation marks, but what about the facts? Style needs toning down. More of the same. After 3 weeks, I am about ready to declare. Then I find out B gets assorted beef written on her essays too, and takes it for granted everybody does. She says teachers always tell you what you do wrong, not what you do right. This is education. I stick it some more. I will say it is interesting, all right. We are studying influences on cultural trends, of which there are plenty, some obvious, not. Of which there are plenty, some obvious, some not. Most of the classes are looking forward to becoming influences themselves. We have not been taught how to do this yet, but everyone figures that comes next. It seems to me, though, that whatever you call it, it comes down to pushing people around when they are not looking, and that is something I do not approve of more than halfway. There's just one person in the class besides me does not seem to feel certain all is for the best. This is the dark fellow I noticed on opening day, 6'6", built like a pencil. His name is Lekofo Koman Baraze, and he is a genuine African. They are rare at Russet because Africans look down on applied studies, preferring everything pure. Most of them study mathematics and literature and so on at their own universities, or the Sorbonne, it might be French, Sorbonne, or somewhere. Seems he is the first ever to take cultural engineering, and not so sure he likes it. There is a bond between us, and we become friendly in a kind of way. I find he is not so unhappy as he looks, but Africans are proverbially melancholy, according to B. I say to Como one time that I am worried about the exams. He looks astonished and says, "But Lizzie, you are so clever." Turns out he thinks this because the things I say in class debates do not come out of any book he knows of, but is encouraging just the same. I need the encouragement. 7th week of term, the director of studies is McClare. Maybe it makes not so much difference, but that week I do everything wrong. To start with, I manage to put in twice the legitimate time reading for several days. I get through 7 books and addle myself so thoroughly. In debates I cannot so much as open my mouth. I am thinking about what essays all the time. I sit up nights writing it and then tear the stuff up. In the end, I guess I just join up bits that I remember out of books and pass that in. B thinks my behavior odd, but she has caught on now. I do not regard McClare as the most wonderful thing that ever happened. The last debate of the week comes after essays have been handed in. I try to pay attention, but I am too tired. I notice Como is trying to say something and stuttering quite a bit, but I do not take it in what it is about. Next day I run into Como after breakfast, and he says, "Lizzie, why were you so silent all the week?" What we studied this time was various pieces of Terry history where someone deliberately set out to shape things according to his own ideas. I begin to see why Como is somewhat peeved with me. Como says, "Everybody concentrated on the practicability of the modus operandi employed, without considering the ethical aspects of the matter. I think it is at least debatable whether any individual has the right to try and determine the course of evolution of a society, most of the members of which are ignorant of his intentions. I hoped that the discussion would clear my mind, but nobody mentioned this side of it except me." I know why Como is worried about this. His old man is a Tartar by all accounts, and has the idea he wants to re-establish a tribal society in Africa like they had 500 years ago. This is why he sent Como to study at Russet, and Como is only half sold on the idea. I say, "Listen, Como, this is only the first term, and as far as I can see, McClare's only warming up. We have not got to the real stuff at all yet. I think we shall be able to better judge it when we know more about it. Also, maybe some of the stuff later in the course might be real helpful if you have to try to argue with your dad." Como slowly brightens and says, "You are a wise girl, Lizzie Lee." Here we meet B and some others, and conversation broadens. A minute later, someone comes along with a little ticket saying, "Miss Lee, see Professor McClare at 11:30 hours, please." Wise girl, huh? Como is still brooding on ethics, and the conversation has gotten on to free will. I listen a bit and then say, "Listen, folks, where did you hatch? You do what you can, and what you can't, you don't. What is not set by your genes is limited by your environment, let alone we were not the first to think of pushing people around. Where does the freedom come in?" They gape, and B says, "Oh, but Lizzie, don't you remember what McClare said on opening day?" This remark I am tired of. It seems McClare put the whole course into that 1 hour or so. Why do we go on studying? I do not know. I say no, I did not listen, and I am tired of hearing that sentence. Did nobody write the lecture down? B gasps, and so there is a recording in the library. It was quite a speech, I will say. There is quite a bit about free will. McClare says anyone who feels they have a right to fiddle with other people's lives has no business at Russet. But there is no such thing as absolute freedom. It is a contradiction in terms. Even when you do what you want, your wants are determined by your mental makeup and previous experience. If you do nothing and want nothing, that is not freedom of will, but freedom from will, no will. But, he says, all the time we are making choices, some known and some not. The more you look, the more you see. The more you see this. Quote, "It has probably not occurred to you that there is an alternative to sitting here until the hour strikes, and yet the forces that prevent you from walking out are probably not insurmountable. I say probably because a cultural inhibition can be as absolute as a physical impossibility. Whatever we do means submitting to one set of forces and resisting others. Those of you who are listening are obeying the forces of courtesy, interest, or the hope that I might say something useful in examinations, and resisting the forces that draw your minds onto other topics. Some of you may have made the opposite choice. The more we consider our doings, the more choices we see, and the more we see, the better hope we have of understanding human affairs. Here are some examples how people often do not make the choice they would really prefer. They are got at for being sissy or something. Or social institutions get in the way even when everyone knows that what should be done. Hard cases make bad law, and bad law make hard cases too." McClare says, also, "You are always free to resist your environment, but to do so limits all your choices afterwards. This comes to make environments so they do not have to be resisted." There is a lot more, but this bit has something to do with me, though you may not think so yet. If I have any choices now, well, I can throw my hand in or try to work something out. All I can think of is telling McClare I cannot use a reading machine. I am not so sure that is a choice. When he had said inhibitions can be absolute, "Brother, no fooling, that is perfectly true." Right now, I can choose to sit here and do nothing or go and get some work done. There is a balance of forces over that, but then I go along to a reading room. I have a long list of books I ought to read. I just take the first, dial it for it, and fit it in the machine. I think, now I can choose to concentrate, or I can let my mind go off into this mess, and I got into it, and what Dad is going to say. No one in their senses would choose that last one. I set my chronoscope for 20 past 11 and put the blinkers on. I switch the machine on. It lights and starts to go. Then it goes crazy. What should have warned me, there is no click. There is the usual warm-up, slow then faster, but instead of a little jump, then ordinary speed, it gets faster and faster, and before I realize it, I am caught. It is like being stuck in concrete, except this is inside of me, inside my head, and growing. It spreads and pushes, but it is too big for my skull. It is going to burst. Then I have let out a most almighty yell and torn out of the thing. I found it later. Left a bit of hair in the blinkers, but I am out of it. There was no one around. I run as though that machine had legs to come after me. I run right out into the campus and nearly crash with a tree. Then I put my back to it and start breathing again. Whatever I have done until now, judging by the feel of my ribs breathing, was no part of it. After a bit I sit down. I still have my back to the tree. I leave thinking till later and just sit. Then I jump up and yell again. I have left that crazy machine to itself. Someone may sit in it this minute and get driven clean out of their head. I run back, not quite so fast as I came, and burst in. Someone just sitting down. I yell out loud and yank him out of it. It is a third year I do not know, from another class. He is much astonished by me. I explain. I guess I make it dramatic. He looks quite scared. I guess I make it dramatic. He looks quite scared. Can't speak. He looks quite scared. Meanwhile, a small crowd has gathered around the door. Along comes Doc Beshravine. Yeah, we're just going to say that. Beshravine, expert at this kind of machine, to see why the breach of rule of silence in this block. He trots straight in and starts inspecting the chair when he says, "Exactly what happened, Miss Lee?" I say, "My God, I have to see Mr. McClare." I have been scratching my wrist for minutes. I now find the alarm of my chronoscope is trying to make itself felt. Once again, I am breaking records away from there. I arrive 1 minute later, but McClare has a visitor already, so I can even get my breath. I also catch up on my apprehensions about this interview. Seems to me the choice is to get slung out as a slacker or get slung out as a moron, and I truly do not know which one I care for less. Then the visitor goes and I stumble in. McClare has a kind of unusual look. His eyes have gone flat a little way back behind the lids. I do not get it at first. Then I suddenly see he is very tired. However, his voice is just as usual, not angry, but maybe a little tired too. He says, "Well, Miss Lee, they say actions speak louder than words, and you certainly have given us a demonstration. You've made it quite clear you could do the work, but you aren't going to. And while it would be interesting to see if you could gauge the requirements of the examiners so exactly this time, I don't think it would justify the time taken to mark your papers. What do you want to do? Go back to Exena straight away, or take a vacation first?" I simply do not have anything to say. I feel I have been wrapped and sealed and stuck in the delivery hatch. He goes on, "It's a pity, I think. I thought when I first saw you there was a brain under that golden mop, and it was a pity to let it go to waste. If only there were something that mattered more to you than the idea of being made to do what you don't want to. It is queer to me to watch someone get a call on a built-in phone. Some do a sort of twitch, some shut their eyes. McClare just lets the focus of his slide out through the wall, and I might not be there anymore. I wish I was not, but I have to say something before I go away. McClare has been using a throat mic, but now he says aloud, "Yes, come over right away." Now he is not tired anymore. He says, "What happened to the reading machine, Miss Lee?" I say, "It went crazy." Then I see this is kids talk, but I have no time to put learned words into it. I say, "Look, you know how it starts? There's a sort of warm-up and then a little click and it settles down to the right speed? Well, it did not happen. What I think, the governor must have been off or something, but that is not all. It got quicker and quicker, but it did something else. Look, I have not the right expression for it, but it felt like something opened my skull and pasted things on the convolutions inside." He has a look of wild something, maybe surprise, maybe just exasperation, but then Doc Beshravine comes in. He says, "Miss Lee, if it was a joke, may we call it off? Readers are in short supply." I say, if I wanted to make a joke, I would have made it a funny one. McClare says, "Ask Miss Lee to tell you what happens when you start the reader." Beshravine says, "I have started it. I connected it up and it worked quite normally." Now the thing has gone into hiding. It will jump out on someone else like it did on me. I have no time to say this. McClare says, "Tell Dr. Beshravine about the reader." I say, "It started to go too fast," and then he says, "Start at the beginning and tell what I told before." I say, "When you sit in a reader, there is normally an initial period in which the movement of the words becomes more rapid, then there is a short transitional period of confusion, and then the thing clicks audibly, and the movement of the words proceeds at a set rate. This time..." Here Doc gives a yell just like me and jumps to his feet. McClare says, "What was I reading in the machine?" I do not see what this has to do with it, but I tell him. Then he wants to know what I remember of it and where it stopped. I would not have thought I remembered, but I do, and now know just where it had to go. He takes me backwards bit by bit. Then I begin to catch on. McClare says, "What is your usual reading rate, Liz?" I swallow hard. I say, "Too low to show on the dial. I don't know." He says, "Is your father handicapped too?" I lift my head again. I am going to say that it is not his business. Then I say yes instead. He says, "And he feels badly about it?" Yes, he would. "And you never told anybody?" Of course not. I do not know if it is scorn or anger or what. Beshravine is talking to him in a language I do not know. McClare says, "Come along to the reading room." The chair has its back off. McClare plugs in a little meter lying on the floor and says, "Sit down, Liz." There is nothing I want less than to sit in that chair, but I do. McClare says, whether or not you have a repetition of your previous experience is entirely up to you. Switch it on. I am annoyed at his tone. I think I will give that switch a good bang. I feel I have done it too. But the light does not go on. McClare says patiently, turn on please, Miss Lee. I say, you do it. Besh-Ravine says, wait, there is no need to demonstrate after all, we know what happened. Then McClare's fingers brush over mine and turn the switch. I jump all over, the thing warms up, and then click. There is the little jump, and the words move steadily through. And you know, I am disappointed. Besh-Ravine says, he will be the son of a bigamist. I jump out of the chair and demand to know what goes. McClare is looking at the dial in the meter. He turns and looks at me with exactly the same expression and says, would you like to repeat your previous experience? Besh-Ravine says, no! I say, yes, I would. McClare bends and does something inside the machine, then says, sit down, Lizzie Lee. I do. I hit the switch myself, too. There it is again. Words slide across slow, and then quicker and quicker, and there is something pressing on my brain. Then there is a bang, and it all goes off, and Besh-Ravine is talking angry and foreign to McClare. I climb out and say, will they kindly explain? McClare tells me to come and look. It is the reading rate dial of the machine. It now says 7,503. Besh-Ravine says, how much do I know about the machine? Seems to me the safest answer is nothing at all. He says, there is an attachment which regulates the speed of movement of the words according to the reaction of the user. It sets itself automatically and registers on this dial here. But there is also another part of the machine, far more important, although there is no dial for it, unless you fit a test meter as we have done. This is called the concentration unit, or crammer. I did know that. It is what makes people able to read faster than an old-style book. He says, this unit is compulsive. When the machines were first made, it was thought that it might be misused to insert hypnotic commands into the minds of readers. It would be very difficult, but perhaps possible. Therefore, in the design was incorporated a safety device. He pats one individual piece of spaghetti for me to admire. He says, this device automatically shuts off the machine when it encounters certain cortical wave patterns which correspond to strong resistance, such as it is called forth by hypnotically imposed orders, not merely the resistance of a wandering mind. I say, but... He looks as though I suddenly start spouting and says, McClare is the most strange. McClare, this is most strange. This very young girl to be so strong, and from childhood too. Looks are nothing, of course. McClare says, exactly so. Do you understand, Miss Lee? One of your outstanding characteristics is a dislike of being what you call pushed around. In fact, I believe if somebody tried to force you to carry out your dearest wish, you would resist with all your might. You are not so set on free will as you are on free won't. The crammer appeared to your subconscious as something that interfered with your personal freedom, so you resisted. That isn't uncommon at first, but not so many people resist hard enough to turn the thing off. I say, but it worked! Let me get a drink. Besh-Ravine says that the safety device only turns off the crammer. The rest of the machine goes on working, but only at the rate for unassisted reading, about 1/10 normal rate. McClare says, you, my girl, have been trying to keep up with a course designed for people who could absorb information 7 or 8 times as fast. No wonder your knowledge seems a bit sketchy. He sounds angry. Well, hell's bells, I am angry myself. If only I had told somebody, it could have all been put right at the start. Or if only the man who first tried to teach Dad the reader had known what was wrong with the way he used it, Dad would have had ordinary schooling and maybe not gone into prospecting but something else, and then whoever got born it would not have been me, so where does that get you? Besh-Ravine is saying, what I do not understand, why did she suddenly stop resisting the machine? McClare says, well, Liz, it is a little time before I see the answer to that. Then I say, we cannot resist everything. We can only choose the forces to which we will submit. They look blank. McClare says, is it a quotation? I say, your speech on opening day. I did not listen. I heard it just now. This I never thought to see. His classical puss goes red all over and he does not know what to say. Besh-Ravine wants to know more of what was said, so I recite at the end. He says, words! Your students frighten me, McClare. So much power in words at the right time, and you are training them to use such tools so young, to use them on perhaps a whole planet. McClare says, would you rather leave it to chance, or to the people with good intentions and no training at all, or to professional axe grinders and amateurs on the make? I say, how do I stop doing it? Beshravine rubs his chin and says, I will have to start slowly. The machine produced so much effect because it was going fast. Normally, children learn to read at 5 when their reading rate is low, even with the crammer. He says he will take out the safety, but put in something to limit speed, and I can have a short session tomorrow. I say, exams in 4 weeks, 3 days. Why not today? He laughs and says, of course I will be excused the exam. McClare says, certainly I will take the exam. There is no reason why I should not pull up to standard. Work is not heavy this term. Beshravine looks under his eyebrows, but says, very well, after I sit down in the doctor machine. 5 minutes later, I am sick. Beshravine fusses and gives me anti-nauseant and makes me lie down 1/2 hour, and then I start again. I last 20 minutes and come out head aching fit to grind a hole. I say, for all sakes, and run at full speed. It is this push and drag together burns me up. This morning it only scared me. He does not want to do this. I try all out to persuade him. I am getting set to weep tears when he says, very well. He is no longer surprised my will was strong enough to turn off the machine. This time it comes full on. The words slide across my eyes now, then quicker, then suddenly they are running like water pouring through my eyes into my brain. Something has hold of me, keeping my mind open so that they can get in. If I stop 1 microsecond from absolute concentration, they will jam and something will break. I could not pull out of my mind any way to think but there is a corner of it free, watching my body. It makes my breath go on, digs my nails in my hand, stops the muscles of my legs when they try to jerk me out of the chair, sets others to push me back again. I can hear my breath panting and the bang in my heart. Then I do not hear it any longer. I am not separate any longer from the knowledge coming into me from the machine. Then it stops. It is like waking with a light on the face. I gasp and leap in the seat, and the blinkers pull my hair. I yell, what did you do that for? McClare is standing in front of me. He says, 87 minutes is quite sufficient. Come out of that at once. I try to stand, and my knees won't unhinge. To hear McClare, you would think it was his legs I got cramp in. I suppose I went to sleep in the middle of remarks anyway. I wake tomorrow in bed. In the morning I tell it all to Bea, because she is a friend of mine, and it is instructive anyway. Bea says, Lizzie, it must have been awful, but it is rather wonderful, too. I do not see it this way. I say, well, it is nice it is over. Which it is not. 4 weeks took a long time from the front end, but not when it is over and I have to take the exam. I have made up my mind on one thing. If I do not pass, I am not asking anyone to make allowances. I am just straight off going home. I am too tired to think much about it, but that is what I will do. Exam, I look at all the busy, interested faces and the stylers clicking along, and at the end I am certain for sure I failed it by quite a way. I do not join any post-mortem groups. I get to my room and lock the door and think for a bit. I think that finishes it. No more strain and grind and tarry voices, and please tune in daily for routine announcements and smells you get in some of this air. No more high-minded kids who don't know dead sure from however. No more essays and no more McClare. I wish they would hurry up and get the marks over so I can get organized and count my blessings properly. However, 64-hour papers take time to read, even with a crammer, and McClare does them all himself. We shall get the remarks day after tomorrow, if then. There is a buzz from the speaker in the study, and Bea is not there. I have to go. Of all people who should be too busy to call on me just now, it is Mr. McClare. He says, I have not notified him of my vacation plans yet. I say, huh? He says as my guardian, he ought to know where I am to be found and he wants to be sure I have got return schedules fixed from wherever I am going, as to make certain I get back in time for the next term. I say, hell, what makes you think I am coming back next term anyway? He says, certainly I am coming back next term. If I am referring to the exam, he has just had a look at my paper. It is adequate, though not outstanding. No doubt I will do better next time. I let his secretary have the details of my plans, and he turns it off on me. I sit down on the floor, no chair to hand. Well, for one thing, the bit about vacations was not even meant to deceive. He did it just to let me know I was through. So I have not finished here after all. The more I think about studying cultural engineering, the more doubtful I get. It is pushing people around, however you like to put it, more fancy than that. The more I think about Terry's, the more I wonder how they survive so long. Some are all right, such as Bea, but even she would not be safe in most places I know. The more I think, well, who am I fooling after all? The plain fact is that I am not leaving Russet, and all the rest of it, and I am so pleased with this. Just now I do not care if the whole college calls me Lysistrata. The end. That is the end of Unwillingly to School. We will now read the sequel, The Lost Kafuzalum, if I can click the damn button. And it's in night mode. Hold on. Give me day mode. Let me double check the battery. Actually, I will end this video here, and then I will upload them separately just so that this can't, just so I don't get halfway through the sequel and then the phone decides to run out of space. So that is the end. You can edit this in any way you want. I will have this in a playlist with the sequel. If you have proper video editing software, you can smush both videos together, because my phone probably won't have enough space to do that. Bye-bye.